First of all, welcome friends and members of the center who have come from around the world. It's always great to see all my past students. And by the way, just to clarify, just because I'm the class of 22 professor of urban design and planning does not mean that I graduated in 22. It just means that their endowment pays my salary. Lucky for me. Okay, our forum this year is about, as Vladimir introduced so beautifully, fundamental change. We're looking at fundamental change, not only in nanoparticles, but in the real estate industry. I think everyone here is aware of what's happening one way or another. We talk about fintech, prop tech, urban tech. Technology is becoming part of everything, and half of us don't know what it is and how to keep up. At the same time, we're looking around our world and seeing old products of real estate dying, bye-bye Sears, and new ones popping up everywhere. Hello, WeWork. What's happening? What the hell is going on? Cities are demanding more and more of private developers. Let me get my notes. Sustainability, livability, affordability. We also know that new players are getting into the development business. Amazon, Google, even MIT. So what is driving all this? As an academic and research center, it's our job at the MIT Center for Real Estate to answer this question by looking across all the individual changes. I think in our daily lives and businesses, we come across this change and we say, oh, that doesn't make any sense, or it's only a fad. And this change, we look at them all and try to understand what the trends are behind them. And we've been doing this since 1984. This is my ad now. A propitious year when the Center for Real Estate was founded. It was also the year that Apple introduced the first Mac. Okay, so it was a long, long time ago. And at that point, we offered the first master's degree in real estate development and created a center for the real estate industry, supported by partners to fund research and to advance the quality of practice and the products of real estate. We were really pioneers in this, and I'm happy to say there are now 75 academic real estate programs in universities across the world. We think of them all as copycats, but that's a little gratuitous. We have 1,100 graduates or CEOs of hundreds of major real estate companies building hundreds and billions of dollars worth of real estate, housing tens of thousands of people and companies, and many of which they started themselves. And we see ourselves as a source of innovation across the world. Now, how this ties back to transformation is that the center was founded in part as a response to incredible challenges facing cities. When another tech, the automobile, was fueling an exodus to the suburbs, causing cities to lose population. In Boston, private investment fell to almost zero. There was not a single major new building built in Boston from about 1930 to about 1965. 35 years, no major construction or investment in the cities. And this led to massive government intervention. For those of you who were around here at the time, you know that, and in many cities of America, to build urban highways and to clear what we thought were obsolete neighborhoods, like the West End of Boston, the famous planning case, where 12,000 families were replaced with, I think I could say, a rather dismal project. And there's still a sign in front of the project that says, if you lived here, you'd be home now, maybe. Okay, what I would like to suggest to you is that we're at a similar moment in time today. And this has implications for us at the Center for Real Estate, but also for the industry. And we should take a careful look at this if we want to see where the future of cities and the future of industry is going, the real estate industry is going. This period of transformation, though, is in many ways opposite of what happened in the 1950s to the 1980s. Now urbanization is accelerating globally. We're seeing the development of thousands of new cities and city-scale projects. At the same time, existing cities are also attracting new population, but it's not the result of migration from rural areas, which is happening in most of the cases where new cities are being developed. That's how they will be populated. Cities in developed countries like the US are drawing in people because they are more attractive, they are becoming more efficient, and they are more productive, and people want to live there. But what's happening to the whole function of development? Unlike the prior period, cities are now losing agency. They don't have quite the talent. They don't have, in many cases, the will, and certainly don't have access to the capital to undertake these major changes, and are turning increasingly to the private sector to make this fundamental change. The way I think about it is that now we're seeing existing cities, which were all designed using 20th century ideas, failing. And at the same time that the government is losing agency to reinvent and redevelop cities. It's clear from this we need a new approach. And that approach is being invented. So let's look a little more carefully at what's going on. There is an explosion of new cities out there. My colleague Siqi Cheng at the Center for Real Estate is exploring the economics of new cities in China, and we have one of our speakers on the panel has a lot of experience in China. If you think about it on a global scale, in the next 30 years, we are going to have to create urban development for 3.3 billion more people. That's almost as much development as we now have on the planet. How are we going to do that? And we're seeing the rise of planned cities across the globe, driving innovation, and in some cases helping to make countries involved with huge, enormous capital investments, like Neom, a new cross-border city being built on 26,500 square kilometers. I have to get my decimal right there. On the Red Sea to drive post-oil economics, innovation, and social change in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel, and Jordan. It's right at the intersection of all of those companies. $1.5 trillion in capital is being invested by the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia. And here, some of the first pieces that are being built are the world's, talk about nanoscale, the world's largest solar arrays, which will power Neom and what is really almost a country-sized development venue. In China, Xiang'an is a new mercantile city being built at a cost of $278 billion on 2,000 square kilometers, south of Beijing on China's largest lake. But to get the scale of what's going on, this city is considered just to be a node in the new Jing-Jin-Ji megacity of 120 million people, all being planned between Tianjin, Beijing, and Jiangnan. This is Ocean Edge, a new marine city being developed in Shenzhen around technologies to exploit the ocean, designed actually by our firm. It's protected from storm surge by regenerating the ancient mangrove forests that for thousands of years protected the coast. In this case, the forest is being grown through digital sensing, which will precisely mix salt and fresh water to create a perfect environment for the mangrove to survive. And high-tech research and production is woven into the urban fabric, focused on deep-sea exploration and resource development of the South China Sea, using autonomous vehicles. We're engaged in another project in Amsterdam where we're providing a new logistical system of autonomous boats called rowboats on the canals in Amsterdam. And the point here is, like Neom, this is a new city that is pioneering new ways of city making with geopolitical consequences. Now, given the scope and speed of urbanization, we can't plan, finance, and build cities fast enough. So that at the same time, vast informal cities are emerging from rural migration. So we're finding new cities being planned, but at the same time, cities coming from the bottom up as people move to cities for better jobs and quality of life. In Medellin, Colombia, the formal city is surrounded by informal settlements that you see here, where 1 million people live in homes constructed with virtually no capital. How can that be? Maybe there's some things we can learn from this method of development, which represents another form of making cities that we feel will dominate the 21st century. Rather than seeing such places as substandard, which is the way the World Bank looks at it, or something to be eradicated, Medellin treats informal settlements as legitimate urban neighborhoods that deserve the same level of service and infrastructure as formal areas of the city, providing schools and mobility like these escalators. You see the escalators going up to transit at the top? If you wonder how they live on the mountainside, infrastructure of escalator were put in along with schools and other public services, enabling these settlements to grow and develop economically into secure, productive neighborhoods. And eventually they do become completely part of the city, absorbed into the normal process of growth. In some cases, a lot easier than planned developments built on the edges of cities. Okay, what about existing cities in developed countries? Urbanization is also happening in places like the US. The blue dots on them, we talk a lot about shrinking cities in urban studies and planning, but the shrinking cities in the US are the red, big problem, yes, but maybe a much bigger problem are the growing cities, which are all the cities in blue, all right? And this growth is not pushed by rural migration, but pulled by technologies and social changes that are making cities more attractive to people and companies. From this perspective, the most important hallmark of the so-called smart city, we're all talking about smart cities, is not new technologies per se, although they're remarkable, but rather the social changes being wrought by those technologies, producing a special kind of culture. It's a particular mix of people, place, and work that yields a highly valuable outcome these days that we call innovation. And as cities face increased challenges to their survival, from rapid urbanization to rising sea levels and depleting resources, the demand for urban innovation is skyrocketing. But the new culture isn't being created by city planners or developers, or certainly not professors, but by a new generation of urban dwellers, born in the 1990s, who are the first generation of digital natives. This is the real impact of technology. Weaned on the internet, mobile phones, and social media, and faced with climate change, extreme urbanization, and growing inequality, they have a different set of values, many of you in this room, than previous generations. Marketing gurus will tell you young people are more socially oriented, collaborative, and less concerned about privacy. They negotiate multiple social networks at the same time, seeing work, shopping, even living as a group activity. I think many of us know this. They are less consumption and ownership oriented and more willing to share. They are fulfilled less by accumulating stuff and more by doing things. That's for sure. That's different than what I am. I'm spending all my time this weekend throwing out stuff that we've accumulated over the past 30 years. Baby boomers are into accumulating stuff. Millennials are into accumulating experiences, like riding bikes rather than driving. Millennials are health and environment conscious, preferring whole foods, more exercise, sustainability, and abhorring waste. In New York City, 800,000 people now bike regularly. This is 3 times the number in 2005, and it's increasing by 9% a year. At the same time, in the US, driver's licenses, the percentage of people having a driver's license is going down. Who would have thought? These are indicators of a fundamental change, and in your projects, if you build a lot of extra parking, you better plan another use for it in the future. Okay. Finally, the younger people are risk takers and entrepreneurs looking for opportunities, not comfort necessarily. Empowered by their mastery of digital technology and faced with high competition for traditional jobs, many are opting to create their own companies to bring new ideas to market quickly. Vladimir alluded to this, that his students are inventing these things in the lab at MIT, and we give them away free, and they go out and make companies out of them. Because of this, we opened our own accelerator in the School of Architecture and Planning, so students can take ideas developed in the lab, in studio, or in projects, and actually launch companies around these and develop these ideas while they are in school. And we're paying them to do that. How do you like that? What a deal. Okay? If only I had that when I went to school. Over the past year, more than $200 billion was invested in urban tech startups worldwide. According to The Economist, this represents a change in the economic foundation of cities, occurring more rapidly than anyone could ever have imagined. As the biggest generation ever, digital natives are the engines of urban transformation. We really need to pay attention to what demands they are creating, which is why so many old-time developers don't get what's going on, or they don't believe it. I have so many conversations. People are so conservative. The world can change, folks. And if you don't believe the largest generation in history and what it's looking for, I'm not sure what other proof that you need. And these folks are changing cities. A recent ULI Institute study shows that 61% of millennials in the US are choosing to live downtown, in downtown city neighborhoods or dense older suburbs, like in Boston, Allston, Brighton, the inner ring of older streetcar suburbs. In lower Manhattan, look at this picture, the population has increased by almost 50,000 people in the last decade. All of them millennials. They're now having babies. You go down there, it used to be for bankers, now there are strollers all over the place. And 3 elementary schools have been built, financed by developers, okay? These people are living a digital lifestyle in which everything is increasingly connected. My mentor, Bill Mitchell, used to say, if highways were the 20th century arteries of the city, we are now putting in the nervous system. Wearable computing can track how you travel, where you go, what you buy, who you meet, what you eat, your vital signs, preferences, your emotional state, moods, and a lot more. Maybe we should call it the Apple Watcher. But there is a byproduct of all these sensors. And the byproduct are huge streams of data that are showing us for the first time how cities actually function. Where are they efficient? How do human beings behave in cities? Which, of course, is incredible value for real estate development. How do humans behave in the physical environment? And these are the Twitter feeds from one evening in New York City, if you don't believe the data, okay? What we see in these data are enormous inefficiencies, waste, and inequities in the 20th century model of the city that we can't afford any longer. But there is a plus side, which is that big data is also opening opportunities to capitalize on underutilized urban assets by using them more intensively, making them more productive. And by the way, that's what development is all about, taking a piece of property and making it more productive, okay? In the process, though, many features of modern city life that we take for granted based on hierarchy, separation of functions, and exclusivity are fragmenting, or I like the word fracking, because I first talked about it in Houston, and recombining in surprising ways. You know this. Everyone in the room knows this. Let's just recount, okay? Apartments have been made more productive by Airbnb, which is fracking the hotel business, and some neighborhoods, unfortunately. Amazon is fracking the retail industry. In the US and Europe, shopping centers are dying, big box stores are dying, Sears is dead, and new formats are emerging. This is Bikini Berlin, a shopping environment of all pop-up shops, so you can have a different experience every time you go. And the shops don't have defined lease lines, their territory changes, and a lot of them are production oriented. So I think this is a Nike store. You go in, you design your own speaker, and it's on your doorstep when you get home. Okay, so combining production with consumption, sort of a new form of retail. Co-working is fracking the office industry. I can't tell you how many really smart, savvy, large-scale developers say co-working, it's a fad. It's a fad. Well, WeWork offers shared office space, right, and a supportive culture for entrepreneurs, and is now the largest user of office space in New York City, and it's growing worldwide. If that isn't enough evidence, what do we need? They've started a new subsidiary called We Live, shared living spaces here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So you can also co-live with one person or a small unit or a multiple unit. They also have We Learn, We Shop, and if you notice, they shortened their name to just We. Okay, and all of this is evidence of how a sharing economy is taking over the fabric of the city. And lastly, digital production is fracking manufacturing. Digital fabrication, nanofabrication, media, mobile applications, medical devices, biotech, green tech, networks, and design are clean, high-value industries that can be accommodated in almost any kind of space, even dispersed spaces. My father used to work in the Buick Oldsmobile and Pontiac assembly plant in Linden, New Jersey. This gigantic complex that, you know, to assemble cars that covered, I don't know, a square mile or something. Without any problem, we could now assemble cars in this space. No problem, you just print the components. There's a printer at MIT that prints 17 components at 17 materials at one time, metal, plastic. You just print the pieces up, snap it together, and we could drive the car out of the front door, okay? So what was needed in the past? In the past, planners, I'll take the credit here, planners thought it was most efficient and productive to move these processes out of the city. And so that we worked here, we lived here, and we commuted between, but we know how inefficient and environmentally difficult that is. These new companies and jobs are being integrated, this is the key point, with other uses back into the heart of cities in their urban centers, not separated into industry parks out in the suburbs as 20th century planners, where 20th century planners wanted them to be. These new industries are mixing into housing, shopping, and offices, the public realm, old buildings and new, creating a kind of fine-grained, mixed-use mixed building use, urban fabric. This is what we're seeing emerging. And all of these changes are affecting the form and function of cities and the buildings within them, making them more efficient and walkable, but as we know in San Francisco, also increasing competition for land and housing, which is driving up rents and creating all kinds of difficulties in the city, okay? Without appropriate public policy that is tuned to the new technology and what is happening, the liabilities will I'm sure, outweigh the benefits. Meanwhile, lower and midtown Manhattan has become a preferred location for thousands of tech startups, as well as established companies who are following the millennials. Consequently, since 2007, urban centers across the U.S. on an average had a 0.5% per year growth in jobs, while suburbs suffered a 0.1% drop. Doesn't sound like much, but this is a complete reversal of a 60-year trend where all the jobs were being created in the suburbs. Now they're being created in the centers of cities. Economist Enrico Moretti explains, in our old manufacturer-driven economy, we moved where the factories were, near natural resources like steel plants, near coal mines, and so on. In an innovation economy, we move to what are essentially idea factories, which are places full of people. This is where the value and the innovation is being created. In the MIT Real Estate Innovation Lab, we have been following the spread of these new productive places across the globe by tracking the development of 21st century workplaces, accelerators, research, industry clusters, patents, and so forth. What we see in all this is the rise of a new kind of city-making industry, which is facing radical transformation of every traditional product type, as I just showed you. This new industry, when you're talking about any product type, it's being transformed. Retail, office, industrial, they're all going through major transformations. And it's the solutions to and innovation of how to create, to deal with this is being driven by data, research, and innovation. So the new industry is highly data-driven. It is involving a new set of players beyond developers. Tech companies, universities, investment firms, management companies are all getting into the city-making act, and they're bringing with them new sources of capital. When Google goes to Toronto, they're bringing their corporate profits with them as a source of capital to invest billions of dollars. This is a new way of developing cities. So let's just look at a couple of these, and then I'll close. Some examples. In Detroit, Quicken Loans and their subsidiary Bedrock Development has acquired 100 major properties downtown, 18 million square feet of real estate. It's a $5.6 billion divestment, and their re-inhabitation of these buildings and transformation of these buildings has attracted over 24,000 jobs. And you're getting out of this, quote, developer, the kind of planning and diagrams that only the city would do in the past, and now we're seeing it coming from the private sector, which has the agency and the capital to implement it. And then there's Toronto, Google Sidewalk Labs. Google in Toronto has had their problems basically because they've invented a new real estate concept, the urban data land value. What is the value of accumulating the data from the project that you're building and selling that? Okay, and ran into a lot of trouble with privacy and so forth, but they'll get it worked out, and they're backed by Google's, corporate profits. They're establishing, by the way, a civic data trust where all the data won't go to Google. It'll go to a civic trust that decides who to get it and why. They're doing a lot of experimentation with innovative construction, like wood construction that you see in these renderings. and a strong focus on health and well-being. Finally, in Cambridge, right here, Kendall Square, MIT is getting into the act. In Kendall Square, MIT, through its own development arm called Matimco, has attracted 62 companies worth $170 billion. And the project has been backed by the $15 billion MIT endowment. MIT invests its endowment in real estate, its own real estate. It is its own, it's investing in itself because it's capturing the value of all these students and professors starting companies and working in the surrounding area. And it's no surprise because universities are the largest employers in 2/3 of the 100 largest cities in the United States. And it's having a huge impact on Boston. Not to be left out, Alston Yards is being developed by Harvard University, backed by their $39 billion endowment, but it includes 358 acres, a whole new neighborhood, and entrepreneurial campus out on the Charles River that is much larger than their existing Cambridge and their existing campus in Cambridge. Add to this the South Boston waterfront, a sea of disinvestment in 1984, when the that wonderful year when the center was founded, which is now a burgeoning innovation district and productive neighborhood. An amazing transformation. And to give you a sense of the scale of the transformations underway just in Boston, the yellow are the three projects I just mentioned, Kendall, Seaport, and Alston. In comparison with the 1860s project of the Back Bay, okay, and the 1960s project, renewal project of the West End that I showed you in the beginning. And you can see that the scale of urban development now dwarfs what has happened in the past. That's how powerful the forces for city making are now on the ground. Of course, this growth brings its own challenges, which we'll discuss over the next couple of days, beginning with our first panel, who are very well equipped to discuss the new city-making industry because they are, in my view, city makers working for city-making companies. And we will be discussing the real estate industry's transformation from developing projects to making cities, and maybe you guys can come up here and we can start our conversation. First, Dennis Hickey, who is the CEO for the Americas of Lend-Lease, but has a wonderful Australian accent. Lend-Lease is building city-scale projects all over the world, and Dennis is certainly on top of them. Next, we have Nina Yang, who is the CEO for Sustainable Urban Development at Ascendas Singbridge, focused in Asia, building new cities in China and Southeast Asia and from Singapore. And finally, my good friend who has taught here at MIT in the past, Guy Perry, who is Vice President of Urban Planning and Design at McKinsey and former president of Invi Development, which built this magnificent project, New City, outside of Warsaw, right? Right, Guy? Outside of Warsaw. So guys, why don't you join me and then we'll have a conversation about this. Thank you.